The kind of format that I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to pretend we are at the radio station because, you know, we'll do a question and answer, play songs and stuff like that. That's kind of going to be the way we're going to do that. So normally I would start with my program with a song. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to play a song. And at the end of that song, we will come in formally and start the program that will give the hosts an opportunity to be able to mute everybody and to get the videos off as well. So here I am with the song.
Smile now, cry later. Smile now, cry later. For you. My friends tell me you could never belong to me, so I'll smile for my friends and cry later. I'm gonna smile for my friends and cry later. Yeah, smile for my friends and cry later. For you, for you. Didn't love you so, I'll smile for my friends and cry later. Smile for my friends and cry later. Yeah, smile for my friends and cry later. For you, for you.
Oh man, I love that Sonny Osuna song, Smile Now, Cry Later. The reason I picked that is just kind of as an intro to what we're going to do tonight, is that Chicanos have always done covers of soul songs. And Chicanos who sang with soulful voices, that type of sound was called brown-eyed soul. And the reason I played Sonny is called Mr. Brown-eyed Soul. He is the guy that epitomizes that sound. And Smile Now, Cry Later is his song that came out on the album in 1966. But he was pumping music out as of 1959. That song that I love, Just a Moment of Your Time. I mean, that's just a beautiful song. And then he made it to top of the charts in 63. He was on the Dick Clark show. He made all of the shows with Talk to Me. And then the sound coming out of Texas was called La Onda Chicana, because they not only did the soul songs, but they did their mothers and fathers songs. They did the polkas, they did the baladas, they did the trio songs. So Sonny Osuna did all of that. He's got a song called Ciudades, and he's out there in a mariachi outfit with the sombrero in his hand, and he does all Spanish songs except for 2 English songs on that album. So they were able to switch between the Spanish-speaking world and the English-speaking world without, just seamless, without any issues, without any problems. And then Little Joe and the Latineers were there. And growing up in my household, Sonny and Little Joe were the songs that were always played. And in Tucson, Arizona, there was a Del Rio bar. And it was part of the Chicano traveling circuit. So every major artist, whether it be Lalo Guerrero, whether it be Sonny Osuna, whether it be Little Joe, always hit the Del Rio dive, that bar. They just always hit it. So in my mom's suitcases, I saw pictures of her and Sonny, pictures of her and Little Joe, autograph stuff. I mean, it was like opening up a time capsule. So I wanted to start with that because I think that he just kind of sets the foundation and the groundwork for what we're going to talk tonight. Now I want to reach out to Ophelia before we get started because I know Ophelia has a time crunch. And you know, this is a Zoom that's in conjunction with the Riverside Art Museum, also the Cheech, and also the Riverside Public Library. But every time that you have a captive audience, you need to be able to take advantage of that captive audience. So Ophelia, I know you have a time crunch, so if you want to give us your spiel.
Thanks, Jorge. Just again, it's great to see a lot of new faces and welcome you on, at least on my part. I know Drew is on here too, but on behalf of the Riverside Art Museum, I represent the Cheech. I am the campaign chair for the Cheech. So at every opportunity, I want to make sure that you guys all get caught up, and we're moving along very nicely. There will be more details, but there's one little thing that we can always do. And unfortunately, somebody stole my Cheech mask. And I don't know who it is, but they're gonna get it. I'll have to order some more, Val. And if any of you would like to order one, please log on to Riverside Art Museum. And what is it? RiversideArtMuseum.org/the Cheech store, and you can order your Cheech mask. Now, it isn't so much that it's, oh, there you are. Nympha right here and Drew are wearing it. Thank you so much for backing me up. It's not so much the small amount of money that we raise. We continue to raise money for the Cheech to provide outstanding programming, but it's for the awareness, to let people not forget that it's an incredible project. Many of you have already supported it. And so just get that mask on. Every time I go out, up to like 2 days ago when I couldn't find it, people ask me, how is the Cheech going? Is it going to open? So it's an advertisement for us, and I encourage you to join me, and please order one. Thank you. Thank you, Jorge.
All right. And as my hat's off to Cheech, because since the agreement was reached between the Riverside Art Museum, the city of Riverside, and Cheech Marin, we have seen just a plethora of programming.
Yes.
You know, a program that my committee, Cultura con Llantas, does, the programming that Unidos does, and everybody. We have just seen a plethora. And even though COVID has kind of kept us hostage in our households, we're still putting on programming. And we have Riverside Art Museum and the Cheech to thank for that. So don't forget that this Zoom program, the one we did before with the documenting the movement, and the one we did before that, unpacking the history behind the Zoot Suit riots, all of that was through I would call it the benevolence of the Cheech and the Riverside Art Museum. So
partnership, okay, partnership.
It is. It really is. But I had an interview the other day, and I said I've worked with progressive organizations my entire life, but progressive in name only, lip service. Riverside Art Museum really reaches out, knows that we are I don't want to say experts, but we are the folks who are knowledgeable about our community, and allows us to do our own programming for the community. And that's the beauty of it, a true partnership, and not just somebody telling us what we should or should not do. So I appreciate that. So going back to our regularly scheduled program, I want to play one more song before we start talking. And I want to show you the influence of the East Coast on the West Coast. And I'm going to play this artist, Joe Bathan.
I wish you bluebirds in spring to give your heart a song to sing. you free. Girl, I'm gonna set you free. Ooh. I wish you shelter from a storm, a cozy fire to keep you warm. But most of all, when snowflakes fall, I wish you love, so much love, girl. I'm gonna wish you love, girl. So much love.
Man, if I had a voice like that, I wouldn't need to be a lawyer. My goodness. So welcome, gente, officially to our program tonight. And I have a special guest with me, Gabriel Roth. Some people call him Gabe, but he's known in the musical world as Bosco Man, right? And he's right here from Riverside. So I want to welcome you for agreeing to participate today.
Thank you, Jorge. I appreciate you having me, man. It's an honor to be invited to do something like this.
Well, you know, as I told you earlier, once we find out what your superpower is, you will be called upon to exercise that superpower in the furtherance of the Cheech, right? And
You pulled the plug early.
So, you know, one of the things that people may not know about you is that you are actually a native of Riverside. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about, you know, where you grew up, your kind of your family life, your parents, and you know, those things. I think we're all molded by our childhood. Our likes in music, our likes in literature, or whatever, are molded by our household. So talk to us about that.
I was born right here in the San Bernardino Mountains in Twin Peaks, at home, a little log cabin. And when I was about a year and a half, my parents moved down the hill to Riverside, and I was here until I was, you know, I went to Victoria and Gage and North High School. And when I graduated from North High School, I moved to New York. So I was here up until 92, up until I was about 17. I moved to New York, and I was there for, you know, a big part of my adult life, and, you know, started my business stuff out there and ended up moving back eventually, you know, to Riverside. But yeah, my parents, you know, they send their regards, by the way. They were both lawyers, and my sister as well, here in Riverside. For a while, my dad and my sister were both public defenders and moved on to other things in civil rights and different things like that. But yeah, I grew up here in Riverside, man. And when I was a kid, I needed to get away from here. I thought, like, let me get as far as I can. But, you know, as an adult coming back, man, I really appreciate it. It's a great place to live.
So what was the style of music that was being played in your household? What were your early influences?
Well, in my household, I mean, my parents were old hippies, you know, so they were playing, you know, rock and roll, but also Motown and Atlantic stuff, Aretha Franklin and James Brown and stuff. That stuff, you know, and they used to in the Beatles and stuff like that, man. So I was listening to a lot of '60s music, or my parents would play a lot of that stuff. And you know, when I was really young, like probably when, you know, junior high or something, my sister and I would start buying records. We'd buy 45s, whatever was the hottest thing on the radio, you know what I mean? And we started buying those. And then I think I was probably about maybe a freshman in high school or something. And for some reason, the stuff on the radio just didn't make sense to my ear anymore. And I started getting into blues records, and I started buying, I remember sometime around then I sold all my toys and went to what was the Price Club at the time and bought myself a record player and some big KLH speakers. You know, it was a big deal. You know, I had a big garage sale and bought those. And then I started buying blues records. I mean, I wasn't like, you know, a heavy record collector or anything, but I started getting into these blues records, and right away I realized I was kind of pulled into just I just wanted to hear the most raw thing I could hear, you know, the least produced, the least affected, just the most heartfelt, you know, dirtiest, pleadingest, you know, rawest blues records I could find, you know. And I remember I had one record by a guy named One String Jones, and, you know, it was a guy with one string on a 2x4, you know, playing it with probably like a pint bottle or something. And that stuff just, for some reason, started making sense to me. And I think it was around the time when I just kind of tuned out to pop music, you know, and ever since then, the radio never really made that much sense to me. So in some ways I was a little bit, you know, a little bit on the outs, you know, like in high school, you know, in Riverside, there was Spankies and stuff. My friends were going there, and all the bands were kind of punk bands and ska bands and stuff, but that didn't really speak to me, that music, you know?
Right.
And then my sister actually went to New York before me. She's a little older than me. And I went out to visit her, and it was some college roommates of hers that hit me to kind of like the Meters and some deeper James Brown stuff and some funk stuff, you know. And then I started getting turned on to that, and you know, just kind of fell down that wormhole, you know. And then the 90s in New York, man, I just got real into kind of like old funk records and funk 45s, and just kind of got deep for the soul. But yeah, it definitely started probably, you know, as a kid with my parents, just listening to, you know, Smokey Robinson or, but even, you know, the Rolling Stones and stuff, you know, all that stuff, those were, you know, for the most part, those bands all started out, most of those rock bands, the Beatles, the Stones, they're all kind of blues bands at the beginning. They're all covering blues songs. They all wanted to sound like, you know, chess records and stuff, you know, and they were covering Smokey Robinson, and they were, you know, covering Junior Wells and all this kind of stuff, man, you know. So it's, you know, it's all coming from the same place in some ways, you know. So I think at some point real early on, I kind of got in my head that the music that spoke to me was, you know, soulful music, you know, which I think can be misunderstood. To me, it's just music that comes from the heart, you know, honest music, you know, when people are singing about, you feel real pain and real feelings in their music, you know. So that's kind of where I came from, I guess, musically.
I think that was my draw to music as well. The pain, you know, oldies are always about professing love.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost my love, but I'm gonna sit here and wait for you if you ever decide to come back to me. Or, you know, Sonny Osuna, you know, píntate, get away from me. Right? It's not the end of the world just because you're leaving me type stuff.
Yeah.
And in my household, not only were those types of songs playing, but also, you know, Los Relámpagos, Los Dandies, and those Spanish songs, which also had the same, you know, message, profession of love or heartbreak or that kind of stuff. So it always just, you know, it just meshed, whether it was English or whether it was Spanish. That feeling, that tug at the heart was always the same for me. And, you know, we would listen to Dick Clark in the morning, and then right after that, it'd be Soul Train, right? And my sister had her 45s with, you know, her music, and then my mom had her 45s with her music. And back in the day, we used to be able to get furniture from McMahon's furniture store on layaway. And we had one of those gigantic stereo consoles that had the 8-track, it had the radio, and it had the record player. And my goodness, man, we blew the hell out of those speakers, right? And then the other thing for me was KRLA and K-Earth 101. Those two radio stations growing up, I heard everything, you know, on there.
K-Earth was what my parents, that was always done in my house as a kid, K-Earth. K-Earth 101. And they had, and what was it, Sundays, they would have breakfast with the Beatles and stuff, right?
There you go.
And I listened to a lot of stuff that way too. But I mean, it's interesting you bring up, when you talk about, you know, as a kid, you know, like I wasn't around that much Mexican music as a kid, but just being in Riverside, being in Southern California, there was something ubiquitous about that mariachi music and stuff. But then as I got older, and you know, my wife she's a mariachi diehard, man. When she gets going, she'll be singing, you know, man, she sings her heart out. She sounds beautiful. It's a beautiful voice. Right. But those mariachi songs, man, I mean, really, you talk about soul music, that's soulful music, man. I mean, it's really, that has so much in common with the blues, you know what I mean? And, and it could be that kind of music, or it could be, you know, something coming from Cuba, or it could be, you know, even North African Ganawa stuff, you know, from like Morocco and up in there. But all those music, you know, all those different styles and different places and stuff, they have something common, which is this pleading, this kind of human pain, you know? And you hear that in this music. And to me, like, that was the thing about turning on the radio, is I always felt like that's something that's harder to find on the radio. It really is, man. Like, I don't feel like you could hear that in, you know, a million records from a million countries from many different decades. You get those feelings. But to me, I don't really get those feelings when I hear pop records that much, you know? I mean, not that much, you know? Right. I mean, there can always be find something good somewhere, but, you know, and, that's what pulled me into music. And even like with Daptone later on, we started bridging out into different styles of music. We're putting out gospel records, we're putting out Afrobeat records, kind of West African sound and stuff, even some garage rock kind of records. But the thing common to all of it is, to me, it's like, it might, in a record store, they might not file it under soul music or R&B, right, but it's all soulful, because these are all records that are raw, and they're coming from the heart, and they're played with feeling, people just singing their hearts out, and it's real. They're not singing about, I was at the club and I got a Lamborghini and some stuff that it's like, that's not real. That's nothing that really, people relate to that in a different way. They relate to that in this way, like, oh, I wish I could, I could be that, or I could live that, and that's a different relationship. And I think you go back to somebody like Otis Redding, man, he's singing these songs, and where he's coming from is a common place. It's from feelings that we all have. Now, we can't all sing like him, like you said. That's why we all got to get other jobs. But that's a feeling that we all get. I think that's why that music, regardless of what language that stuff is in, or what rhythm it is, or regardless of what style it is, those are the records to me that I was like, oh, that to me is like when people say, well, what is soul music? I feel like that's soul music, you know what I mean? And I think you get a lot farther when you just kind of listen to the lyrics and the feeling of somebody, the feeling of the musicians, than you do trying to put it in these boxes about, like, who's singing it and where they're from and what they look like and when they sing it. Those are, leave that to the radio stations to figure that out, man. Like, to me, it's like, if it speaks to your soul, it's soul music,
Well, love, heartache, that's universal, but also, growing up in poverty and talking about hard times and talking about trying to, eke out a living, or, the pain and injustice of racism or whatever, all of that, those are songs with messages.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to overgeneralize, but I'll just say this, that I don't listen to any radio stations now. It's either NPR or 50s on 5 or 49 Soul Town or Rock the Bells 43, where I can get my hip hop and my rap, but the old ones had messages. They had a variety of different things. So those are the only stations that I listen to.
Kids today with their rock music, what do they know? Yeah.
Oh, but it's not even that. It really is how many songs can you listen to that talk about, money, or how sexy you are, or what your sexual prowess is, or how many women you get, or how much money you have.
That's what I'm saying, man. I was 13 years old, and on the radio is, Material Girl or whatever, this kind of stuff. And like, to me, the records that were speaking to me were these blues records, because I was like, man, that's the real business right there, man. That's the real thing. These guys are talking about, stuff. I believe them. You know what I mean? I believe them. All these other people, it's like, they're trying to make you believe that they live some dream. I don't know. It just, I never connected with that stuff,
I still don't. So what was the first instrument you picked up?
Probably my sister played the piano and the guitar. She's very talented, much more talented than me. I'm lucky she became a lawyer, because if she would have been a musician, I would have had to find something else. I'd have a real job. I don't know what I would do. But so she taught me some chords on the piano and a little bit of guitar, and then probably when I was around 13, 14, I started taking drum lessons. And the first instrument that I really felt like, I could be in a band with my friends, was the drums. I played the drums, and I had a great drum teacher right there on Magnolia, what used to be Lear's Music. It's that pawn shop right there on Magnolia.
Yes.
I used to go in there and take drum lessons from a guy named Rick Steed. And this dude, man, like, it's crazy years later. I mean, he's passed away since, but the way that he taught drums to me, I think it still sticks with me today, in the way that I think about rhythm and the way I think about music. I have a very, in some ways formulaic. Like, I don't think it's necessarily the best as an artist, but as a producer, when people come to me with all kinds of crazy ideas and stuff, I can kind of like put architecture together. I see rhythm and I see harmony in this kind of, very mathematical, organized way in my head. And I think I got a lot of that from this dude that was teaching me drum lessons on Magnolia, man. He was a great dude, and it's weird how many years it takes sometimes for you to go back and be like, oh, this person really taught me a lot. Sometimes it takes some distance, but it still sticks with me, the way I think about rhythm, for example,
So how did you earn a living in New York?
Well, when I first went to New York, I didn't have to because luckily I was very fortunate. I was a student. I went to NYU,
Okay.
you know, and I was living in the dorms, you know, and living on borrowed money and loans, and you know, my parents borrowed money, and everybody borrowed money. You know how that was, and I was real fortunate, you know, and then when I graduated, I mean, at some point when I was about in my senior year, I met this cat named Philip Lehman. And Philip Lehman had a record company in France called Pure Records. And I was a big fan of his company because they would put out these compilations of these super rare 45s. And at the time, I was buying a lot of reissues, a lot of compilations, things like that. So I was a huge fan of this label. And then a mutual friend of ours introduced us, a guy that was in the program with me at NYU. And he introduced me to this cat. And this guy was saying, man, I love these old records, and I want to put out new records that sound like that. But he didn't really know about engineering and music theory or something. So me and him started making records together. And that's really how I started making records. And I, to be honest, I didn't take it serious at all. Like, I never really thought that was a career or, you know, something else. And I think that was, in hindsight, I think it was a huge advantage for me, you know, because in the music industry, I think so many people come into it with these ambitions. They want to be pop stars and they want to do this. And they're trying to, you know, play this game and follow these rules and make these moves. And I just didn't care about any of that, man, because this guy, Philip, he didn't care. He was a very contrary dude. And, you know, I grew up in a very contrary family, you know, so we weren't trying to play by the rules. We were just trying to put out 45s, and we wanted to be the rawest, most messed up sounding 45s that, you know, just the roughest recordings, you know. So we were making these recordings in basements, and I didn't think anybody was going to buy them, but I didn't really care because I didn't think I was going to make a living anyway, you know what I mean? So I didn't have any pressure like, oh, I wonder if people buy this, or I wonder what the industry thinks of this. We didn't care. And we put out the first bunch of records we put out, like we would try to sell them to record stores. We'd press up 45s. You know, the first one we did was a Lee Fields record, Let a Man Do What He Want to Do. It was the Lee Fields 45. And we'd go around. Philip had an old Jeep, and we'd drive around all the record stores in New York and drive out to Philly and Boston to the record stores and try to sell these records. So we're trying to sell them to these records for $3, you know, and it was a great record, man. This guy, I mean, not because I was gifted or Philip was gifted, but because Lee Fields is one of the greatest voices of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
It was a great record, and nobody would, you know, we couldn't sell them. We could practically not give them away, you know. So Philip, being the contrary, devious shit that he was, he went home and he scratched them all with newspaper. It made them look old, right? So now we go back into the same record store, but instead of bringing a box full of records they were trying to sell for $3, he'd show up with one copy, and he would sell for $75. Because they would think it was an old record. They put it on, and they think it was this rare old Lee Fields record, and they would snatch him up. And all of a sudden, we started selling stuff, and it kind of blew my mind because it's like, man, people don't want to hear anything we're doing because they figure if it's new, it's terrible. And at the time, to be honest, man, this is 1995, 1996. I kind of felt the same way. You know, I mean, at that time, when you thought about like funky records and stuff, groovy, you know, it was, you know, the brand new heavies, maybe it was, you know, maybe Jamiroquai. It was this real kind of slick stuff, you know, which was kind of cool, but it wasn't what we were into. We were into this raw stuff. We were into all these, you know, that one-off weird, rare pressing of some band that was trying to sound like James Brown, you know, those homemade records, you know, that was the sound we were after. So anyway, we started putting out some strange records. The first album we dropped was called The Revenge of Mr. Rapogi. And this is all Philip's idea, man. I was just along for the ride, man. I was in charge of engineering. I was in charge of the music, but he was the mastermind behind all this mischievous. He said he wanted to do this Kung Fu soundtrack and put it out as a reissue. So we did this soundtrack called The Revenge of Mr. Rapogi, and it was a reissue from a Kung Fu movie from like 1971. And the music, it was all mostly instrumental. It sounded like JB's kind of stuff, you know? And people flipped out, man, and people were buying this record like crazy. We sold like 6,000 copies, which at the time, to me, was, you know, mind-blowing, man. You know, I'd never seen nothing like that. So we started selling a lot of records, and people all thought it was a reissue. And it was funny because we'd go into record stores, and the record store owners would be bullshitting us stuff, and they would tell us, like, oh, I got the original. Like, oh, I'd love to see that sometime, you know. Or, oh, yeah, my cousin got the VHS of the movie at home. And be like, man, I would love to see that movie. Because, you know, we made the whole thing up, you know. So we did a couple more records like that. We did a Nino Nardini record, which is like a fake music library record. We did this record called the Doctaris, because we were really into Fela Kuti and the Afrobeat Nigerian sound. So we did this kind of Afrobeat, Afro-funk record. And we said it was made in Nigeria, and people bought it like crazy. And they told us you have a picture of the band? Do you have a bio? We said, no, we don't have any of that stuff. They said, well, you have to. The distributor said, you have to have a picture. You have to have a bio. What's the story behind this record? We said, we don't have a story. You want the record or not? And they bought them and they sold like hotcakes, you know? So it was, I had a very, very strange, like the way I got into the music business was strange. And the whole time I kept thinking like it was just kind of for fun. Like I didn't think, I was a college student. I wasn't taking it seriously. And I think that it was because I didn't have any, you know, he just didn't care. He was independently wealthy, and, you know, I think he had some deeper issues, but it was very contrary, you know what I mean? So we were just kind of punk rock about it, you know, we didn't care. And I think that was why we were successful, you know? And so it started growing. We started a company called Bosco Records. And that's when I met, you know, I would start working with Lee Fields. I met Sharon Jones around that time to come sing background for Lee Fields. And, you know, Antibalas, this Afrobeat band started. And a lot of the real seminal connections that became these family of musicians in Brooklyn is from that era, you know, from Bosco Records. And that really, we started building up this family of musicians with a common philosophy. And it goes back to what you and I were talking about music being soulful and honest and just no bullshit, just come from the heart, you know, just like raw, you know, and hitting hard and just about the feeling. And there was no tolerance in the studio for anybody who was trying to be fancy, anybody who was trying to brought any ego and said, you know, anybody who's trying to be a virtuoso, anybody who came in and started talking about, oh, well, they're going to play this on the radio or they're going to buy that. There was no tolerance for that. Nobody wanted to hear that in the studio. It was, do you feel it? If you feel it, it's right. And that was it, you know? So anyway, don't let me start get going, but.
So how did that morph into Daptone?
Well, around the turn of the century, around 2000, my partner and I had some business disputes, which I won't go into, but we ended up having to fold the record label, which was real sad. But I had all these musicians, man. I had Sharon Jones, and I had Binky Griptide, and I had Homer Steinweiss. I had all these incredible musicians, Neil Sugarman, and everybody wanted to keep making records, you know. And I had tried to work out a deal with some other company where they wanted me to produce records for them, and I was going to have an imprint. It was real complicated. And then Neil Sugarman, who was a saxophone player, and he led a band called the Sugarman Three, kind of like a Junior Walker type outfit. And I'd produced a number of records for him on my first label, on Bosco. He came to me, and he was doing the same thing. He was trying to get a record label, and he said, man, forget all this stuff, man. Why don't you and I start a record label? And I said, man, I had a taste for that. I hate the record business, man. Like, I just want to make them. I don't want to sell them. And we kind of made a deal. He said, man, you know, show me what you know, and I'll sell them, and, you know, we'll make them, and we'll sell them together, man. It'll be cool. And we shook hands on it, and, you know, I never at all would have guessed that I would still be, you know, that would be something that pays my mortgage, you know, 20 years later. But yeah, we've been doing it almost 20 years now, that Daptone, you know, and Neil and I still run it together, you know.
I have queued up a song by Sharon Jones entitled Window Shopping. It's the album is Sharon Jones and the Dat Kings. I Learned the Hard Way is the title of the album. Set that up for us before I play the song.
Wait, which song are you playing?
Sharon Jones, and it's called Window Shopping.
Oh, Window Shopping. Yeah, Window Shopping is a nice song, man. That was written by my real good friend Wayne Gordon, man. It's beautiful, man. I think it's like one of these kind of mid-tempo things that just going back to what we were talking about, this kind of modern resurgence in Southern California, this brown-eyed soul scene, is like we were approaching soul from a different angle. You know, it's a lot of, you know how it is. It's a pretty big ocean, and there's just kind of little pockets that people get into, this sound and that sound, and, you know, sounds come and go. But I picked this song out because I thought this is a kind of mid-tempo one that kind of fits in a little bit with the kind of lowrider vibe that's kind of enjoying a resurgence now. So
okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and play that.
You know, when you walk down the street, it seems like you be with your man and his eyes just turn every time a woman walk by, like he just came decided to get whiplash looking to her. Can't make up his mind. And I think I know this relationship the same way. I don't know. I think I might be just wasting my time. But you know what? Let me tell you, baby. I'm through with your window shopping, baby. I'm through waiting when you're gonna come around. the question if you love me. But I know the answer is you'll never settle down. Oh boy, you keep window shopping. You browse around with no intent to buy. Soon you'll understand, or maybe you'll finally get it when the store goes down. And I know it was never meant to be. Keep window shopping, baby. Keep window shopping, baby. Keep window shopping, baby. You let a good thing pass you by. It hurt, I can't keep going through this. I'm not so thinking you're right for me. Because right now I no longer need you. Oh, but I need you to stop convincing me. Oh, and I know it wasn't meant to be. So won't you just keep on, keep on, keep window shopping, baby. Keep a window shopping, baby. Oh, keep window shopping, baby. You let a good thing pass you by. Keep on, keep on, keep on, keep window shopping, baby. Oh, keep window shopping, baby. Oh, oh, keep on looking now. You let a good thing pass you by. You just keep on looking. You just keep on window shopping. You just
So every great oldie has that percussion foundation, the horns, the harmonizing vocals. I mean, I hear Barbara Lynn, I hear Barbara Mason, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
When I hear Sharon Jones, I hear the past, all
Yeah.
those past artists who I have listened to since I was a youngster, right?
Yeah.
To today, I hear that. So what's the backstory on Sharon?
Man, Sharon was my partner for 20 years, man. I met her. There was a saxophone player named Joe Urbeck. I used to make records with him at Bosco, you know. And we were doing a record with, doing that record for Lee Fields, that Let a Man Do What He Want to Do. And I wanted to put some backgrounds on it. And Joe Urbeck says, oh, my girlfriend could come down and sing it. And she'll bring a couple friends. I said, great. So the next day, who shows up as Sharon Jones? You know, just 5 feet of dynamite, just comes into the studio like, you know, and it's out in Long Island, you know, this cheap heavy metal studio. We used to record everything because it was cheap. We used to go out there. So she comes into the studio, man. I said, well, nice to meet you, Miss Jones. Where are your friends? And she said, why pay $3 when you can pay me? And that was it. She laced up all the harmonies that day and sang a couple other things. And, you know, from that day forth, man, me and her were like this, man. And we, we did a couple more 45s on Desco, and then when we got Daptone started, the first thing we put out was a full length that I did with her, and we went to Barcelona for a little residency and got the band together, got the Dap Kings together to back her up, and the Dap Kings was pretty much kind of the all-stars left over from the Desco stable. All the best musicians kind of came together and made the Dap Kings, and that was it. We were off to the races, man. From there, we were on the road for years and years and years, man. We were just hitting the stage and making records and records, man. We just had a long, beautiful relationship, and I never in my life will ever meet anybody else like her, man. Like it's hard to talk about her. She passed away in 2016. She had cancer. I mean, there's a great documentary, Miss Sharon Jones, if somebody wants to check it out, or you could, just dig into her catalog and listen to her sing. But it's hard for me to describe, really, man. It's like Sharon Jones to me was like there's nobody like her, man. Anybody who ever saw her live, I mean, she was great in the studio, but she didn't even like going in the studio. Her thing was being on stage and connecting with people. And the way that she sang, man, she came out of singing in churches and singing in wedding bands, and it had to do with. It wasn't about her being on stage looking down at you. It was about everybody in the room, like she would love to jump off the stage and just be singing in the audience, and she just connected with people, man. She connected with people, and she had just so much soul and power and raw energy. She was just like she's like a fireball, and she just came just kind of burning through, man. And anyway, she was amazing, man. And I can't really, it's hard for me to talk about her because she meant so much to me for so long, But she was really the flagship. Her, Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings was really the main bedrock of everything of my entire career. Like everything that built up on Daptone, Charles Bradley and everybody else, man, we kind of built off of that. And it came from her touring and being on the road and us hitting every little bar in Detroit and going back and hitting a slightly bigger bar year after year until we were playing theaters, and it got really big, man. For a minute, we were selling like hundreds of thousands of records on her and touring the world, man. It was really a beautiful thing, And
so I'm going to cause you
passed away to kind of feel like, that's the end of a certain era in my life, and just appreciate what it was and try to find a way to move on, But so she was really she was the centerpiece for me of everything I've ever done musically, like everything else I've done has been coming off of that energy and coming off of what I learned from her, like just being on stage with her, realizing how good music could feel, and we talk about rhythm, and soul music, just like feeling, because she would drive, she wasn't a drummer, but anything she picked up turned into a drum. She could play any instrument, and just her body on stage when she would be dancing, the way she moved her body drove the whole band, and she, just so much rhythm and so much energy and so much soul crammed into this just little fireball of a person, And her and I were very much kind of, in some ways, kind of opposites, because I don't have any of that. I'm not an artist. I don't have, I didn't come up in church. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any of that to me. You know what I mean? What I have is kind of like, boxes and formulas and like I have architecture. Like I'm good at talking to people and getting people to get along. Like my skill is getting people who are much more talented than me and try to get them into the studio and try to get them to, do something like, and I'm aware of that, So with me and her, it worked out great because she didn't want to know anything about that. She just wanted to go out there and hit thing, and she wanted the rhythm to be And I was the one who was in charge of leading the band and keeping the band together, And so we got along great, man. And that band, the Dap Kings, became a family, man. These are still to this life. These are my brothers, to this day,
So I'm going to cause you some more emotional pain. Talk to me about Charles Bradley.
Oh, yeah. And Charles Bradley's, another person, obviously a very, very good friend, very dear to my heart. I met with Charles Bradley a number of years later, and it was very strange how I met him. This is a strange story. I lived at the time in a basement apartment in the south side of Williamsburg, which wasn't that nice at the time. Now it's Hipsville, but it wasn't. And we lived in a basement, me and my ex-wife down there in the basement. And one day there was like a knock on our window of the basement. And this dude, Charles Bradley, just shows up at my house. And he said, I heard you were looking for a singer. And I wasn't looking for a singer. I mean, it was great, but I wasn't looking for a singer. And I said, man, who told you that? And he said, I can't remember what he told me. The name was Larry or whatever. This guy is this drummer, Larry or something. I said, man, I don't know who Larry is, man, and I don't give my address to anybody. So I still, to this day, I mean, for years after that, I asked Charles about it. we could never figure out who sent him to me. It was almost like he came from the heavens and just showed up literally on my doorstep. But you know, we started working together a little bit, and then eventually I connected him with Tommy Brennick, who's a really close friend of mine, great producer, man. And Tommy Brennick, he started out when he was young. He was a guitar player in the Dapkings, and then he bridged off and he started the Budos band and an imprint in Daptone called Dunham Records. He did the Menahan Street Band. You know, he did all this other stuff. But his work with Charles, I think, is maybe, you know, same thing for him. I think that's, you know, that's his Mona Lisa stuff, man. So him and Charles became partners, and they started doing records together, you know, and they did a handful of records, you know, and, you know, I would help him mix it, or I'd play a little bass here or there or something, but Tommy was mostly producing that stuff. And Charles started touring, and we would do these soul review tours, you know, just like the old James Brown tours, the Motown tours. We would do these Daptone soul reviews, you know, and we would go traveling across Europe. At one time we went across Europe in like 3 buses. The whole Daptone review. We had Sharon Jones, we had Charles Bradley, we had Antibalas, we had, you know, just all these groups, man, you know, and it was beautiful, man. It was really a beautiful. It was really a family. It is really a family, you know. But then, you know, the same year that we lost Sharon, we lost Charles also to cancer, to stomach cancer. I mean, it was a rough year. We also that same year lost Cliff Driver, who was a great old blind organ player. And band leader that produced, you know, that was the music director for Naomi Shelton. And then shortly after that, we lost Dan Klein to MLS, who's a singer from the Frighteners. I mean, I'm going to try to keep it short, but basically it was a rough year for us, you know what I mean? And in some ways, that period for me was very hard, obviously, but also kind of a period of closing, kind of a moment for me to like look back and be like, yo, we did this beautiful thing. We brought great musicians together, and we made a family, and we made really good music, and we really connected with people. You know, we really did something. You know, something I was proud of, and I'm still proud of. You know, and that was, to me, that was kind of, you know, it's not like you know, it's never a bookend, because obviously there's still a lot of the same artists and a lot of the same people working. But in a certain way, there was kind of like, that was the old guard. You know, those were our stars. You know, that was our Marvin Gaye and our Tammy Terrell and our Smokey Robinson. That was Sharon Jones and Charles Bradley. And you know, so when they died, it was definitely really hard. Not just on us, but on our fans and on the bands and on everybody, you know.
I'm going to play a Charles Bradley tune, the Telephone Song. And then I want to know if you know anything about the documentary that has been made on Charles Bradley. So let's play his song first, and then we'll come back. throwback to the talking songs. I did a radio program where I played all the talking songs where,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, so, the OJs, the
Yeah.
Manhattans, all of
Yeah,
that. So that was
yeah.
good.
Yeah, there's a lot of those songs, man. Yeah, they have sometimes it's right at the beginning, and then sometimes in the middle they break down. They sing for a minute, and they break it down and say,
Yeah.
girl. It always starts with like, or girl, or something. There's always like, they always go into it the same way, man. I
Because
used to
that
like
was
Joe Tex would do that on every tune. I always liked that how he did it, man.
that's the move I still use today.
It
What
ain't wrong.
I tripped out about Charles Bradley is that he didn't hit it, at all, until he was much, much older.
He was in his 50s.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
normally people hit it in their 30s, 35s, maybe 40s, but this guy hit
Yeah.
it like in his late 50s, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So he's gone too. My favorite recording of his, though, is a song called Loving You, and it's at a
Oh,
bike
that's a
shop.
beautiful one.
And what I loved about that, and I like it better than the studio recording of it, because the live version has those trumpet players, and the trumpet players are out of note. You hear it, right?
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
makes the song.
I'm gonna call him up and let him know that you said that, man.
But it does. I love that. I love that song better than I like the studio version. I never play the studio version. I always play that one because I just
Wait, so
love
it's
it.
live. Where is it from? It's live. It's a live recording from where?
It's KXN something.
Okay. Is it KEXP or something up in Seattle?
Yeah, there you go. That one.
Yeah,
But
because we all used to roll through there. They were always good to us, and we used to roll through there and play live for them all the time.
But it looked
Yeah,
like a bike shop because there were bikes behind them. The band is playing and there's some bikes behind.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about, man. I think it was a record store, but it was,
Okay.
it's Seattle, so they got 10 speeds everywhere. It's like Portland.
Okay.
It's just like,
Right. So that
and
was,
man, yeah, Charles Bradley's another one, man. That dude was like same thing as Sharon, man. Like the dude was built out of something different. Like there's nobody, you'll never be another person like that. And he was a very enigmatic individual. I mean, in some ways so strong, but in some ways just a very vulnerable person.
right.
And he had a lot of hardships in his life. And I think you were mentioning that the documentary. I think it's called Soul of America. A friend of ours made. And the thing with that documentary is there's some really beautiful stuff in there, and some things you get to know him about. But there was a little bit, I always felt that documentary was a little bit skewed in that there was this storyline put on there that kind of painted the story of this kind of poor black man who was kind of in the ghetto and homelessness and dealt with this kind of struggles and poverty. And then at a later age was discovered and became, a big singer and saw the success and everything. And I thought that it was for knowing Charles, I just thought it was really very oversimplified. Like there was a lot of real nuances to things that were painful for him, pain that he went through and challenges he had that weren't as simple as this kind of, box that they put it in, like, oh yeah, poor black men on the streets that didn't, like, I feel like, yeah, that was obviously, racism and poverty and violence, all these things was a really big part of who he was and what he was able to, overcome. But there was a lot of other stuff too with his mother and even with his friends and with his sexuality and with just who he was as a person that was much more nuanced and to me much more interesting, that they kind of, like there was a scene in there where they have a picture of him in his basement pulling a piece of burlap over himself to go to sleep. They didn't mention at that point in his life he owned that building. His mother lived in one apartment upstairs and he rented the other one up. He was collecting rent from. I mean, it was like, you know what I'm saying? Like they kind of had a story and they just kind of like, how I thought there was a little bit of that was a little bit rough. But yeah, man, you can't take anything away from Charles. He was a really unbelievable performer and just a beautiful person, man. Just a great guy, man.
You know that mainstream America loves those so-called Horatio Algiers story where you pull yourself up by your bootstrap, and they always, I don't know, they cater to that storyline instead of everything else. My storyline would have been how music carried him through his entire life. That would have been my storyline.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
But
it's interesting. He worked as a cook and a handyman and stuff like that. And it wasn't until he was much later, and people just telling he looked like James Brown, so he would do James Brown impersonations, just to make people laugh. And then he ended up hooking up with this friend of mine, another blind piano player. There's plenty of them in Brooklyn. this guy Jimmy Hill, who used to play with like Wilson Pickett in the '60s, everything. Jimmy Hill's a bad man. I've done a bunch of records with him. That's another story. But he hooked up with Jimmy Hill and the Jimmy Hill All Stars, and they started doing this little James Brown tribute called, and he called himself Black Velvet, you know. And so he came down, when he came down to meet me and came down to my house, he said, man, you got to come down to the Tar Heel Lounge. It's a little tiny bar in Bed-Stuy. He said, you got to come down to the Tar Heel Lounge and, you know, check it. And I remember because at the time I had injured my knee and I was walking with a cane just for a couple of weeks, you know. And it was wintertime in New York and I had kind of some long leather coat I got at some thrift store or something. But I didn't think much of it, you know. But so I got this limp and this cane and this long leather coat. I walk into the Tar Heel Lounge in Bed-Stuy, and it's like 1971 in there, man. It looks like something from the Players Convention or something. Dude's got like, you know, fur coats and canes and matching hats and diamond rings and like, it's like straight Pimps and Players convention in there, you know. And I'm sitting there limping through with my cane. I was like, oh man, you know. But you know, if I saw him do his James Brown review, me and my partner Neil, we went down there, you know, and we caught him a couple times, and we were like, man, like this, we don't want you to do a James Brown impersonation, but man, this dude you could tell there was so much feeling in this man, you know, so much heart. And, you know, really with Charles, the biggest challenge, the first thing I recorded with him was called Take It As It Comes. And it was on the Sugarman 3 Pure Cane Sugar record. And this is, I don't know when that was, way back, 2002 or something. But it was pretty much a real James Brown sounding tune, you know, and he sounds great on it, but he sounds like James Brown. And when he got together with Tommy, you know, the challenge that we put to him and that Tommy put to him was like, yeah, we know you can pretend you're James Brown, but who are you? Like, what's your voice? You know, and what's your story, you know? And it was a very, very hard and painful journey for that man, you know? Right. And I think one of the real breakthrough tracks for him was a tune called Heartaches and Pain. And Heartaches and Pain is him telling the story. It was just, he had this little thing he used to play on the piano. Man, he used to play this, man, all the time. I can even show you. He used to play this all the time. It was like... And he would just play that all the time. He'd go back and forth and play those chords, you know? And so Tommy said, let's get your chords, man, and let's tell your story. Stop being James Brown for a minute. And he started telling the story about when his brother got shot, you know? And how he had to come out and the cops were there. And, you know, they had to tell him, they told him that his brother was dead and all this stuff. It was a very, I mean, it's a very heavy story, you know? I mean, going back to what we were talking about before, it's like, I mean, that's as real as you can be. And he sang that song. He wrote that song with Tommy, and they recorded that, and that was like a breakthrough. You know, that was like, whoa, this is a way heavier thing than hearing some guy that kind of sounds like James Brown, you know? This is you know? And that was really a breakthrough, man. And you know, I think that was the thing that launched his career. And from there on, he started doing these shows, and man, the way people responded to Charles is unbelievable, man. They would, you know, and he'd jump off the stage and hug him after the show. The same thing as Sharon. It was very real, you know? It's not this idea of I'm the performer and you're the lowly audience, you know, and people are going to just sit there and look up to you. It's like, no, man, let's feel this together, you know, like he had this kind of this pain in him and this love where he just felt this desire that like, if he just sang hard enough and if he just loved hard enough, he could make all this pain in his heart and in the world just go away. He just wanted to do that. You know, he just wanted to hug people, man. And you hear it, man. You hear it on his records. You hear probably why you say you love the live one. It's the same as Sharon, man. These guys live was different than studio. They don't want to sing to a mic. They want to sing to people, man. You know, they want to look in somebody's eyes and sing their hearts out, man. And that's the thing about these singers. It's real different from a lot of people that are going through the motions, you know.
Even and on that one live track, he even does the James Brown gets on one knee, and he's belting the tune on one knee, right? It's fantastic.
Yeah, he'll do all that, man.
So set up Sun and Star, Gonna Make Time.
Oh yeah, Sun and Star. They sang with Sharon in a band called Good and Plenty, which is a wedding band, like in the late '80s, like early '90s, a wedding band in Staten Island, and they all used to make a living singing in this Italian wedding band, right? These three singers, and they would go sing these disco songs and stuff. Anyway, so they were good friends with her, and then they kind of lost touch with each other. And we worked, you know, and then Sharon and I started working. And then I think it was around the I Learned the Hard Way record where we were trying to cut some background vocals. And I finally talked her into, or maybe we were on tour and I reconnected with Sandra or something, but I reconnected with them through Sharon, through her old friends, and talked them into coming out and singing some background vocals. And we ended up bringing them on the road. And then from then on, I don't know when that was, 2010, 2012, we brought them out and they became the Dapettes, you know, and they were Sharon's background singers every night. They would be on stage with us. We had, I don't know, 12, 13 people on stage or something, you know, and they would be doing all our backgrounds, you know, and they were just, I mean, just two of the baddest singers you can imagine. Either one of them could dominate the stage by themselves, but they were more than happy to just hook Sharon up, you know, and they were a family, those three women, you know. And then we decided we wanted to highlight them, so we did an album with them, Sun and Stars, called Look Closer. And man, it's one of the great sleepers of the Daptone catalog to me. It's why one of the reasons I put it on here. It's just a beautiful, beautiful record, and it has all kinds of different stuff on it. But it's just a soulful, amazing record, Sun and Star. You go try to find it if you know, if you're looking for it, go to you know, I don't want to be an advertisement, but man, you should hear that record. It's a great record. So this is a song from there. This is a song called Gonna Make Time that was written by Homer Steinweiss, who we should also talk about, man, a great drummer who's been on everything from, you know, the Jonas Brothers Sucker to, you know, he does lots of stuff with Bronson and Amy Winehouse, all these great hit #1 records that you don't know about he played on, you know, but, you know, he was a Dat King drummer first, so I gotta tell you that. And so he wrote this song, so this is gonna make time.
Does have a voice, doesn't she?
Yeah, that's Sandra Williams, man. That's my girl.
Oh,
We're trying to do some more
goodness.
stuff with her, but yeah,
And
her and Star, they're both great singers. Yeah.
so Steve Brannon said that the Charles Bradley video was shot at the Johnny Mello Bike Shop in Austin, Texas.
There you go.
Right.
Corrected.
And then there are two other questions here. Let's see. One is from Antonio Nieto. It says, got a question for you, Gabe, wondering how you got hooked up with Victor Axelrod, and how did you guys work out him doing the reggae music of Daptones? He's got such a great ear for that 60s ska and rock steady sound. So nice that Daptone is such a great hub for the best soul and rock steadies of the past 20 years.
Oh, that's nice, man. Thank you, man. Well, Victor Axelrod, I mean, like I said, we only have so much time, but there's so many of these guys I could talk to you about for 2 hours. Victor Axelrod is a dear, close friend of mine, man. I met him in 1996 or 1997. He was playing in a band called Cooley's Hot Box, you know, and he's a keyboard player, but he was also starting to produce stuff. And he was the original organ player for the Soul Providers, which later became the Dap Kings. And, you know, he toured with us, and also for Antibala. So I toured with him for years, made records with him for years. But he was always a reggae head, you know, and he was doing reggae productions for other people. But it wasn't until a handful of years ago, you know, we talked about it for years, trying to get him to make a reggae record for Daptone. And to us, the kind of record we want, I mean, obviously reggae is a pretty broad genre, but what we were feeling was like rocksteady, you know. I don't know who's hip out there, that stuff, but like, you know, the Heptones and Slim Smith and those kind of tunes, those cats in Jamaica in the 60s, mid 60s, early 60s stuff that were listening to the Impressions and the Tams and these R&B records and these harmony records, you know. And so we wanted to make a record like that. And it was years when he kept saying, no, I don't have the right people. And finally he found the Frighteners, and he made this record with the Frighteners. Man, this record is bananas. Again, we don't have time to play all this stuff, but man, he made this record with the Frighteners. That's one of, to me, it may be the best record Daptone ever put it out. And it's hard for me to say that because it had very little to do with it. But you know, it's funny. I always mess with Victor because I always pretend I tell him like, oh yeah, people were asking about the Frighteners, and I told him it was all me, you know. But no, that's all Victor, man. Victor's a great reggae producer, and he's still doing more stuff. I work with him all the time. But he also played organ. He probably played on that track, on some of those tracks you just heard. He played organ and piano on Dap King stuff forever. He played, like, you know, when Dap King's backed up Amy Winehouse on that Back to Black session. Somebody asked a question about that. He played on that stuff, you know. So he's been an integral part of the family, man. And I've known him for a long time.
All right, next song I have queued up is Napoleon Dimps and the song Norma Jean.
Oh, that's a cool one, man. Napoleon. So now that's kind of good because we got to move on, man. You'll get me like, you know, I'll start crying and talking about the old days, and we'll never get to. But so Napoleon, this is a new jam right here, man. Napoleon is a cat I met. We were on the road with Sharon, and we would be touring through Detroit, and we played little places, and this dude would show up and talk to us. And at one point at a sound check, he wanted to like audition, and I was like, all right, man. And we did. I think we played "Change Is Gonna Come" or something, you know.
Ooh.
And he was singing, and he sounded so good. I was like, man, we got to make a record. But then it turned into a blur, man. You know, we were on the road, and he was he's actually from Flint, Michigan, you know, and he was in Flint, and this went on and on and on. And it wasn't until about a year ago where we actually reconnected. I think Neil might have reconnected with him, and he hooked him up with me, and I brought him out here, man. He'd been singing on kind of what's left over of the Chitlin circuit is kind of the Southern blues circuit, you know. And I brought him out here, and we started working together and writing stuff. And we cut this tune, Norma Jean. And, you know, I think it's hopefully the first of many, man. We're working on some more stuff. I'm planning to do an album. But the interesting thing about this tune is this isn't really a Penrose tune. You know, this isn't really that scene. It's a Daptone tune. And it is kind of a little bit more East Coast, a little bit more kind of Chicago, Detroit Brothers of Soul, that kind of sound, you know, that kind of funkier kind of sound. But the musicians, man, it's Caitlin Moss is the drummer who's from the Altons, who's an unbelievable drummer. This woman is bad, man. She's from LA. So we recorded right here in Riverside, downtown at our studio right here on the University. And the singers are all the Penrose singers, man. It's the guys from the Sinceres and the Altons and Vicky Tafoya and Mike Noriega, from my boy right here from Corona, you know, record man, and just all the singers we knew, man. And a bunch of guys I met for the first time, like the Rodriguez brothers, who later came on to start singing more background for Los Yesterdays and stuff. But it was really this family affair. I brought in like 11 singers to sing this, like, wow. I had this idea of doing this kind of choir type singing, like almost like Four Tops, but Brothers of Soul, you know. And a real good friend of mine, Michelle Jubilee Gonzalez, you know, playing violins. And so it's kind of a cool production, but it was all done here in Riverside. So it's an interesting kind of transition piece, right, because he's from Flint, Michigan, and it's really a proper Daptone record, but the production was done right here in Riverside with locals, with Southern California musicians and singers backing him up. So
after I play this song, I want you to talk to us about how you made the transition from New York back to Riverside. What were the deciding factors, and then how you came across the artists that are now under Penrose. So we'll discuss that after we play Napoleon Dimps and Norma Jean. that song is a bit different than the Daptones and
Yeah,
that whole Daptone,
definitely.
because there isn't the heavy duty percussion and the horns.
Mhm.
It's more a 1970s. This sounds like this, a soundtrack to a movie, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
don't you hear it? Opening scene,
yeah,
closing scenes, or,
yeah. It
you
has
know,
it's got that kind of drama to it.
yeah, like I'm
Like
gonna
just a
go
drop
take
of
care of
Broadway in it, right?
I'm gonna go
Yeah,
take care of some business, right? You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
somebody wronged me, and I'm gonna go handle it, or I
yeah,
got to go tell this woman that she means a life to me. I mean, but
yeah,
it really does sound like a soundtrack. It's like
yeah.
great,
But
and then the
it's cool. It's like I said, those are like that sound and all those people. It's like that's this. That's what kind of really to me is becoming kind of like, I don't want to call it the Penrose family because I want to extend it to all these records that aren't even on Penrose. But
right.
Joey Quinones is playing organ and singing on there, and even my neighbor down the street, Denise Borgani, is a pediatrician. Man, she's in there singing. And you know,
Wow.
uh, Brian from the Altons playing guitar, and like I said, Caitlin on the drums. It's just basically like this family feeling of like a bunch of people that want to make music together, getting in a room. That to me is what I loved about what I love about Daptone. And to me, like the golden years with us was about that, like about this family and this crew, like getting in the studio and having a good time together, and to see this starting to come together out here like that feels great, man. Like it feels cool to feel like there's a scene coming up, man.
So
So.
tell me about your decision to come back to Riverside.
Yeah, well, it was 2009, I think, and my wife and I had our first baby, Penelope, who was about a year and a half, and my wife was pregnant with Rosalie, our second, and Brooklyn ain't so cute when you start having babies,
Mhm.
It's pretty fun when you're young and free. But once you start having babies, it's a brutal place to live, So we would come back here to visit our families, and we actually were looking in LA. We were going to move to LA. We started looking at all these houses and stuff, and then we came to Riverside to visit my parents or something, and we saw this house out here, and this was right when the market totally dropped, like 2009, and when the thing just totally fell apart, and we just got a great deal, and it was just good timing, I had a settlement from an accident that messed up my eyes, and the market had dropped, and we just came out here and found this beautiful house, and we said, man, what do we need to be in LA for, man? Like, Riverside's mellow, it's beautiful. We don't need more action. I got enough action in my life. At the time, especially at the time, I was still touring, so it was like, Thursday I'm in Paris, it's like, what do I need like action for? I just want peace,
Right.
So it was cool, man. I was just like, we moved back to Riverside, and for a long time though, for the first bunch of years I was back here, I was still just going to New York, once, twice a month and recording in New York. I was just flying every couple of weeks to either for tours or for recording, and I was still using all my New York musicians and all the New York bands. And it was really a while before I had much connection. I mean, nobody even knew I was out here, I think. You know what I mean? Like, everybody still thought I was in New York. I got a New York phone number, But it wasn't until a couple of years ago where, through a really good friend of mine, Mano, downtown here, Riverside, man, started connecting me. He connected me with Joey Quinones and the Sinceres and stuff. And through him, I started meeting, Brian Ponce and Adriana Flores and the Altons. And I met Jason Joshua through an organ player, Adam Scone, best organ player of all time, who was also in the Sugarman 3 with Neil Sugarman. It's all connected, right? But he was in Miami, Florida, and he'd met Jason, and Jason was he was an old Daptone fan. He started playing guitar and singing a little bit with Adam Scone, so we kind of connected with him. And then Tommy met Los Yesterdays out in Pasadena or Altadena or something. So it just kind of started, these connections started happening just organically in the last couple of years. And, I started kind of tapping into this scene out here, man, which is, like you and I talked about before, there's this renaissance right now. Oldies and Brown Eyed Soul, and just kind of this Chicano love affair with soul music and this mutual connection, that's been around since the beginning, since the 60s, maybe the 50s, I would probably defer to you on that. I'm not going to try to tell that story, but that's a long connection. But this energy right now is different because it's about young bands and new bands. It's not about let's try to get this old band together. Let's bring out Brenton Wood, or let's bring out all these legends and do a show at the casino. This is about young bands, like young guys getting in a van and playing a bar, just like you know, musically it's soul music, but philosophically and strategically it's punk rock. You know what I mean? It's young people with their vision, you know. And for me, it was really exciting to come upon, and it was at a really interesting point in my life because there was a certain bit of sunsetting, you know, with Sharon passing and me just kind of coming to terms with this, like, you know, that I had this musical high in my life that I'm never going to match, you know, and I'm not going to try to chase it. I'm not one of these guys, let's go find the next Sharon Jones. Like, that's not going to happen, man. You know, that was it. That was the thing. That was my time. And, you know, the musicians from that family still make records and we're still moving forward. But that time is over, you know, and Charles Bradley's gone. And, you know, I live in California now, you know, and that studio in New York is mostly dormant in Bushwick, you know. So it's kind of a next chapter. And for me, like, what I started realizing was, you know, 20 years ago, I was where these kids were. I didn't have a pot to piss in, man. I owed money all over the place, from school, from making records. All my credit cards were maxed up. I borrowed money from I didn't have nothing, man. I had nothing, and I was scraping. And I was trying to make records and trying to play shows with any way I could, you know. And I didn't have, not only did I not have money, but I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have any of the stuff. And now after 20 years, man, like, from, you know, not my hard work, but the hard work of our staff and the hard work of these artists just being on the road and working and putting out records. I mean, I'm real fortunate, man. Like, I have these resources now, you know. I have this record company that's respected and people pay attention to what we put out. I have, you know, great marketing people. I have the best staff in the world, you know. We know how to manufacture stuff. We know how to sell stuff. We got connections in, you know, Australia and all over Europe. We've got, you know, we got a lot going on right now. And to me, I took a second. I realized, like, yo, I have all the pieces that I wish somebody would have handed to me when, you know, like, I've done so much hard work. And to me, like, these kids right now, I mean, I say kids, they're not kids, man. You know, just kids compared to us, but they're not kids. You know, they're 20s and 30s. They're grown people. I shouldn't disrespect them that way. But, you know, these musicians, man, these artists, it's their story. You know what I mean? And to me, like, that's a really important part for me about my relationship with, when you talk about Brown Eyed Soul and you talk about Lowriders, all this stuff, man, like, I'm the first one to tell you, man, I ain't Mexican, man. I'm Jewish, man. I'm not going to, you know, it's not my story. I love soul music and it belongs to everybody, and I don't, you know, let somebody else have that debate, but it's not my story. But I'm in a position right now where I can help them tell their story, you know. They have their sound, they have their songs, you know, they have their scene. And, you know, Joe Quinones and Los Yesterdays and Jason Joshua and Vicky Tafoya and the Altons, you know, and Trish Toledo and all these people, man, they have a scene and they have an energy right now that's so exciting, you know. And to me, like, coming from where I'm at, it's like, yo, I got the baddest studio in the world. I know I'm very good at producing records. That's true. I can't sing, you know, I'm not an artist, but I can, if you got a song, I can help you get to your vision, you know what I mean? So to me, like, that's the real exciting thing about this chapter. Penrose to me is, like, very different from Daptone, because Daptone was me and my boys. Daptone was me and my friends doing it our way. We're setting our own rules. We're doing this on our terms. We're making our own records. Man, forget whatever anybody tells us. This is our thing, you know. Penrose is a little bit different than that, you know. I mean, we still have the same kind of punk rock mentality. We're still going to do stuff independent on our terms. We're not trying to chase nothing. But we're not the artist, man. I'm not the artist in this, you know what I mean? And to me, that's the beautiful part about it. I'm not in charge of writing songs, you know. Right. I may help somebody with a chord change or something, but they're not my songs, man. They're their songs, you know, and it's kind of their moment, man. And it's a big moment because people are feeling this stuff, man. People are really responding to it, and these artists are coming up, and it's been, I've just amazed to me how quick it seems to be coming together, you know. I mean, this pandemic obviously it's a kick in the nuts for the whole world, so I'm not going to try to, you know, compare that with what anybody's going through. But just as far as the momentum and the energy that we had leading into that, man, this became a family so quick, man. Like, we did maybe one little gig together where everybody was playing, and we booked all these other reviews for the whole Penrose thing, you know. And but already it feels like a family, you know. And like I said, it's not necessarily just Penrose or just my artist, just my label. It's about this whole scene, you know. And, like, many artists, like, you introduced me to a lot of stuff too, and some of the stuff that you sent me, man. There's so much energy right now, so many young people making cool records right now, you know, on the scene right now. So
And the connection for Chicanos and oldies and soldies is the lowrider culture, right? Because when you look at Mireya Avila's songs and you look at her YouTube videos,
Yeah.
what's there? She's being chauffeured in a bomb, right? Or all the bombs
Yeah.
going down the street, or when they do the song "I Want You Around," which is an old Mary Wells tune, right?
Yeah. Mary Wells and Marvin Gaye, man.
That's
Woo,
right.
classic.
They're in a back of the back of I couldn't see the front, but it looks like a 38, 39 Chevy, right? So to
Yeah. Yeah.
us, music and cars and that scene are just so interwoven,
Yeah.
right? Where you really cannot separate the two. For
Yeah.
me, at least, for other people, maybe for youngsters you can, but for me, it was getting in the car, punching the 8 track or the cassette, right?
Yeah.
And just cruising. For us, it was cruising Fairmont Park. It was
So
cruising
beautiful.
Nunez Park in San Bernardino, and what went along with that, and just looking at all the cars, and every car had music blasting. Or back in the
Yeah.
day, Jay, the DJ, was on 88.1, which is the
Yeah.
show that I have now, but it's 88.3. But Jay the DJ would be on every Friday with dedications, and every car would have that radio station blasting.
Oh,
So it was like in multi stereo, because every
yeah.
single car
Hey,
had
real quick, not to
music.
derail you, man, but for a second, let's talk about your cars, man. What do you got over there, man? What's in the garage? Let the people know, man. Don't keep that a secret, man. Let them know you're real, man. Let them know, man. What do you got over there?
I have a 37 Buick, a 4-door, stock with gangster white walls. I picked up a 37 Chrysler limousine from New Jersey. I have a 69 Impala. All three of those are completely done, so they're ready to roll. I'm working on a 39 Chevy. It's at the paint shop right now. And then my brother Miguel, who lives with me, just picked up a 64 Bel Air wagon. So we're working on that right now. So
Yeah.
for me, it's music and cars. If I could earn a living doing either one of those two things, I never would have been a lawyer and I never would have become a judge. But every one of us who does cars or music, we have to have a day job. So my day
Yeah.
job has always been the law, right? Because
Yeah.
that pays the bills. I've been on the radio station now every Friday for the last 38 years. I've earned zero money from that because it's the love of playing music, right? And
Sure.
I don't just play oldies. I'll play Chicano movement music. I'll play Tejano. I'll play dandies. I'll do speeches. I'll invite people and tell everybody you want, airspace to play your music, to talk about your music. You just give me a call and we'll hook it up. So, everybody that does a concert in the area would call me up and say, "Hey, Blue, do you think we can do a show?" Sure, come on. And they'd bring their music and we talk about history and, what shaped them and, all kinds of stuff. So to me, those two things are just one and the same for me. It's
Yeah.
like, it would be like cutting off an arm if you've cut off the cars.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about it for me, because my perspective is, like I said, like I'm very aware that I'm coming in. I grew up in Riverside, but in some ways I'm coming in from the outside of that, because I spent my adult life in New York, and it's the interesting conversation that I have with my staff in New York, because they're so excited about Penrose and they love these records, because the whole Daptone staff in New York, they're all record collectors, man, and they're all into, they're all soul heads, man. So they love this music, but that culture that you're talking about, man, the car culture and the lowrider culture, that's not their life. They're not
Right.
living that life.
Right.
And yet at the same time, right now, I'm tasking them with marketing this music. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's interesting because we had some very deep talks about this at the beginning of this when we were trying to put this Penrose imprint together. And we drew some real clear lines, and it may seem stupid, but we had to kind of spell these things out. I said stuff to him like, look, if you're doing graphic design, don't use Gothic letters. You can't do that. You don't have the right to use Gothic letters. You know what I mean? You take the subway to New York, and they're like, hell yeah, man, we're not doing it. I said, but if a band comes to you and they say, hey, we did this poster for our show, and it's got Gothic letters, it's got a clown with a tear on it, man, it's your job. Amplify that. Put that out there. But you can't create that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's interesting to kind of realize that we actually have to look at these lines, and kind of like be like, look, we want to amplify this and we want to support this without appropriating it. You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to let these people tell their story and bring what we have, because we have a lot to offer to that. You want to talk about soul music? That's our bread and butter, man. You know what I mean? Like I've been living in that stuff. You want to talk about let's go into the studio and make a soul record? Like I know where to put the microphone, man. I know how to work out the horn melodies and the harmonies and stuff like that. Like I'll be deep with you on that, man. I'll open my mouth. But then there's certain things where I'm like, yo, that's not for me to put myself there. And
Right.
our staff has been very, you know, and it's not about being PC. It's not about like, oh, we're afraid of the backlash. It's not about that, man. It's about trying to do it right, man, and trying to be like, you know, what do we have to bring to this? Because as soon as it becomes bullshit, I got no interest in it, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? That we can't undermine this whole thing by bringing anything unpure to it, man. We gotta let these people, these artists, tell their story in their way. You know what I mean?
It really is about respect.
Yeah.
Because
about
you're respecting
respect.
who they are as individuals. You're respecting the culture that they come from. And you recognize that there is a difference between East Coast culture and West Coast culture. And then you recognize that in Los Angeles, in the Inland Empire, and Southern California, there is a very different subculture than you have almost anywhere else on the planet. Even different from Northern California, right?
That's right. Yeah.
What we listen to, what we play, even how we fix our cars up is different than Northern California, different than Texas, different than Arizona, right?
Yeah.
So all it is yet you're paying respect to those individuals in that cultura that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time too, it helps you kind of give some focus to the idea of like, you know, music, and particularly soul music, is like the idea of kind of owning this stuff and protecting it. You know what I mean? Like it's just strange because, you know, somebody out here could be mad at like, why are these people out in New York, or like I heard people get mad at like Duran Jones or something, like why they got this video where they're in lowriders in the park, you know, these fools from Cincinnati or so, you know, it's like, but at the same time it's like, well, wait a second, you're listening to a whole bunch of records were made in Detroit by a bunch of African Americans, you know what I mean? And like it's all coming across, you know. And I think a lot of times, I think you and I talked about this before, there's a lot of times this very shallow understanding of music that it kind of like starts in Africa and goes this way and that's it. But it's never been that way, man. It's always been a conversation. It's always been a conversation, man. And you know, whether you're talking about like Fela or Louis Armstrong or any of these artists, man, James Brown, like any of these, you know, all these guys, man, they're all talking to each other, you know. I mean, you talk about Talk to Me, right?
Yeah.
That's my boy, Little Willie John, man. That's my, you know, who, you know, just a shout out to Vicky Tafoya, who's on here, who bought me a beautiful biography. It's both her and I, that's one of our favorite singers, you know. But Little Willie John's one of the greatest singers ever, you know what I mean? And that was his song. That was his biggest song, you know what I mean? So, and then later on, Sonny had his hit with it, you know. But it's a conversation, you know. And I think like you make the right point, which is like, it's about respect, you know, when you're trying to make sure you're, you know, music is for everybody to enjoy, you know what I mean? But it's just like, you got to be careful about like, about trying to define somebody's culture, you know. You got to know when to talk and when to listen, you know what I mean? That's to me like, and honestly, like, you know, culture and all this politics and stuff aside, like in the studio, for me, that's like a really big part about making a record, is like know when to say like, oh, I got an idea, and know when to take a step back and listen and be like, oh, you guys got a great idea. Let me get out of the way, you know. And you know, somebody actually, just because I want to acknowledge some of these people make comments, somebody brought up Gabby Moreno from Guatemala, and I did a record with her. I produced a record with her a couple of years ago, and they asked when I was going to do some more stuff, and she's a perfect example for me of an artist that like I just got out of the way in the studio with her, man. She is so talented, and you know, she's writing her songs. She is an unbelievable musician, an unbelievable singer. She's not going to sing a flat note, and if she does, she'll be the first one to tell you about it, you know. So with somebody like that in the studio, you just get out of the way, you know. And you got to know. Like, to me, that's like the best part about producing a record, is when you can do nothing, when you can just be like, sounds great, I'm not going to break it, you know what I mean? I'm not going to screw this up, you know. That's the best moment, you know.
So I want you to talk about how you got introduced to the These Sinceres, and then set us up for playing Seems Like. And then after we play that, I want you to talk about Vicky Tafoya, who, by the way, is one of our audience members today. Hey, Vicky. I've been seeing her around the lowrider circuit probably for the last 15 years. So then I want you to talk about Vicky, and then we'll play her tune. So let's play the Seems Like. Why don't you set up these Sinceres and then that song?
Okay, well, Joey Quinones is, I think a lot of people out there know, is Joey's a hustler, man. This dude can play any instrument, can produce, can engineer, can write. He's working with everybody. You know, every record you put on lately, it seems like he's either singing or playing guitar or producing or something. He's all over the place right now. He's a very big, to me, he's a very strong force and a big part of the scene that's going on right now. And obviously, the Sinceres is his group. He's the leader of that group. Seems Like is a really interesting song because they did it for this online thing. There's this online video that hit YouTube, and they just got, you know, I don't know, 1 billion hits. I don't know what a lot is. You know, what do I know? But anyway, it blew up, man. And for them, you know, they were telling me they play parties sometimes. People want them to play it 3 times in one night, you know. But this is a huge song for them. And I think Joey told me, like, he had felt like, you know, he was glad that people loved the song, but he felt like that kind of live studio version never really sounded the way he wanted to do it. So we had this idea, like, if we were going to do a record, if we were going to do a 45 together, of revisiting that song, but really taking our time and kind of crafting it and opening it up and making it a little bit slower and deeper and sweeter, and just pulling a little bit out of it, you know what I mean? Like putting a little bit more on it. And, you know, so we went in there and worked on it together, man. And I mean, I really love how it came out. And to me, the biggest compliment to that song is that the original YouTube live version was such a huge hit. And nobody's ever come up to me and said, live version's better, which is crazy. Because usually people fall in love with that. A lot of people told me, don't record that song. Because that song, people already got that song in it. You can't mess with a song like that. Leave it alone. But, yeah, you know, I think it's a beautiful song, and you know, obviously Joey's a talented dude, and I'm sure he'd be a lot more things that we play today. So that's all I got on Seems Like that.
All right, let's play it.
Can I call you Rose?
Oh, that's not the song. That's not the song. Hold on.
That's a whole other story, though. Yes.
She's like this heart of mine. Oh, let go. And the heart she gave to me just turned out to come. Seems like this heart of mine. Just don't know. But the pain that love can bring, from the way that love makes it. But I'll try to make it understand. Seems like I lost my mind while searching for love, and the flames I feel deep in my soul, they will never ever tire. Burned by heat and quenched by fire. So let it burn for you. Seems like this heart of mine could get stronger, and the things I used to feel. Don't you know that I feel no longer? Seems like this heart of mine is on me, yeah.
I love his voice. He's just got that raw quality, to his voice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. That was a bad dude.
Got a nice voice, man.
I always tell people I don't play an instrument. I don't know how to sing. All I could do is turn knobs on the radio, man. That's about it. So
Yeah.
you got a leg up on me. You know how to set the vocals and the levels and the harmony and where to come
Yeah,
in
man.
and where to get
Yo, but that's all
out.
because I can't sing either, man. If I could
Yeah.
sing, I wouldn't know how to do any of that stuff. I would have a whole
Oh,
different set of friends if I knew how to sing, man. It'd be a whole different game. Yeah,
definitely. It says somebody named Heather Sunshine Ivara said, "You must not sleep," or Joey must not sleep. Very
no,
talented.
Joey doesn't sleep, and
He
he's got a
does.
new baby too, man. Mazel tov to him and his, man.
Oh, okay. And then Ninfa says, much respect to you. And then let's see. Steve Brannon says, longtime fan of Daptone Records, Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings and Charles Bradley. Rest in power to both. I'm lucky to see SJDK live 4 times. Wow. And excited by your new Penrose Records. So nice. Oh, and he already has the first 5 45s from
Nice.
Penrose.
Yeah, man, beautiful.
Hi. Fantastic. Now let's talk about Vicky Tafoya, though. That voice that just blows out of Vicky, man.
Yeah, Vicky is unbelievable. Has a beautiful voice, Vicky Tafoya. And Vicky Tafoya is interesting because Vicky Tafoya, I mean, that's IE right there, man. She's from right here, and Vicky Tafoya, man. I met her and Matt Bell. Just let's be clear right here. There's 2 guitar players that play with Vicky Tafoya. One of them is her husband. Vinny is her husband, and Matt is also her guitar player and her partner, but not her husband. I think,
Okay.
let me just clarify that right now for everybody so that we don't have any confusion on that. But anyway, I met Vicky and Matt, I think at one of these record shows downtown years ago, and Matt was working at Groovers, and we kind of bumped into each other. And I heard them down there. He was playing guitar, and they were singing harmonies. It sounded great and stuff, But the thing is, they're into a lot of different stuff, and like Vicky and Matt there's a few different groups. They got Vicky and the Vengeance, which is more of a rock kind of thing, and they got the Redondos, which is a straight a cappella doo-wop type of thing. But then they got Vicky and the Big Beat, which is more R&B.
Yes.
And
yes.
we sat down. Mike Noriega's like, man, you got to meet my friend Vicky, and I was like, I feel like I know them. So Mike Noriega introduced us, but we'd already met each other, and we sat down at the studio and we started talking about music, and we realized there's a lot of stuff that she liked, that girl group stuff and kind of more rocking things, and things that wasn't really my bag. And obviously there's some more funky stuff or later stuff or R&B stuff for me that wasn't really her bag. But there was this, if you drew the Venn diagram, there was this sweet spot in the middle, and the sweet spot in the middle was this kind of early 60s, rhythm and bluesy, it's this sound, man, and it fell right in line to me with Penrose. And it's like this lowrider sound. There's a lot of shades. There's a lot of different sides to that. You know what I mean? And her thing to me was just like that, like early 60s, like high school dance vibe, like Richie Valens, except for you can't afford the record. You know what I mean? But it's just like that feeling. And her voice is so beautiful to me that she's pulling off. There are a lot of singers right now that, I don't want to go too far down this path, but I would say, we did this work with Amy Winehouse, who I think was a great person, rest in peace and stuff. But Amy Winehouse and a few of these other modern kind of neo-soul singers had a very strange influence on some young singers these days that feel to me like they're a step removed from what we're talking about. They're a step removed from the sincerity and the clarity and just the directness of the blues. And they're doing these things with their voices, these weird things that are kind of affected. And I feel like, they're trying to sing like, they might be trying to sing like, I don't know, whether it's Amy Winehouse or somebody else, but they're trying to sing like somebody who was trying to sing like somebody else, and it's kind of removed. Right. Vicky Tafoya is different. Vicky Tafoya is the real deal, man. When she sings, she's clear. She has this beautiful, clear voice. And if it's evocative of earlier times, it's not retro. It's not referential. It's real. That's where her soul is at. That's where her life is at. That's where her voice is at. And her voice to me resonated right from the beginning. So we cut this record forever, and My Vow to You with her, which is, I think, coming out as soon as we can get the pressing plants rolling again. So that's my setup on them. I won't take too much time because I know it's time to play.
Let's play that. So I listened to 50s on 5 on Sirius XM, and that song could fit. It's a throwback even further than,
Yeah, it is, man.
right? And to me, that's the rockabilly influence, because I know that Vicky does a lot of rockabilly shows,
Yeah,
and those people who dress up in the 50s and their cars are modeled after the 50s and the rolled up
yeah,
pants
yeah.
and the rolled up shirts. So that one goes even further back than
That's right. It
the
does.
70s and the
It
60s.
does. Yeah, and that's what was cool about it to me, is that it's kind of like I said, it's kind of this intersection where it's like it's a kind of a deeper corner of the same tradition. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I think right now there's this kind of the hottest sound right now is this kind of sweet soul harmony sound that's kind of like a little bit later, this kind of almost mid '60s do like these group harmony sound. Like that's what everybody's hitting right now. These major
Yeah.
7, minor 7 chords, and this is like a little bit before that. These ice
Right,
cream
right.
chords, this sweet thing, But the thing about that is, to me, is like there's very few singers that can pull that off. Like
Right.
a lot of people think, oh, that's a simple song. Like try to sing that, man. Like there's
Right.
very few singers that could sing that, and I wouldn't want to turn it off, man. Vicky sings that, and it to me is beautiful, man. Like I think she's a very unique talent, man. Like to me, I'm really I feel very fortunate to be connected with her, and I hope to do more stuff with them too.
Right on. Let's see. You want to cue up the one that I played by mistake? Can I Call You Rose by the Sacred Souls?
Yeah, these Sacred Souls, man. The Sacred Souls. That's one bag I probably don't even have to plug because their stuff has been catching fire, man. It's crazy, man. The Sacred Souls. These cats from San Diego. Two of the guys, Alex and Sal, had been kind of doing music, and then they hooked up with this guy, Josh Lane, the singer, who's African American man who's from Sacramento. He was up in Sacramento, I believe, and he moved down to San Diego, and they connected. And he comes from a whole different school because he had taken he'd been studying singing and studying music, and he has a very well-trained voice, but he's got this kind of Marvin Gaye sensibility to him that I think a lot of these other singers are maybe reaching for. Like a lot of these singers right now on the scene, like, the better records are great, but there's some of the records that people are just kind of hitting a falsetto and kind of trying to fake their way through. But he's got a deeper thing, like just melodically and even lyrically, man. He's got a deeper thing, and I think there's a certain chemistry, man, an alchemy almost between his voice and Sal and Alex's sensibility, because they came up like with their parents and their grandparents in their houses. This lowrider sound, that's deep with them. That's a family sound. That's an old sound. You know what I mean? So they're feeling those lowrider records. They're feeling those records. So to have their music and his vocal things and them kind of meet, I think they just kind of came up with. They kind of struck gold a little bit. And I had a couple friends independently tell me, again, my friend Mano, man, said, man, you got to check this band they're playing. I think they were playing at 2J's or something, Fullerton or something. They said, you got to go down and check this band out. And I went down and checked them out. It was like their second gig. The first gig was at a record store, and this is their first gig in like a bar. And I went down and saw them, and they were a little nervous and things were a little bit off. But man, I knew right away. I was like, yo, these guys got something special. So they came off the stage, and I pulled them aside, and I said, yo, I introduced myself, and I said, you guys want to make a record? And they said, sure. And I said, what are you doing Tuesday? And they said, nothing. So like 3 days later, they drove up to Riverside, and we cut a couple sides and got them together real fast, like much quicker than some of this other stuff. Like it just took a day or two to get these tunes together. And we did 2 sides, Can I Call You Rose, and Weak for Your Love. And they're just killer sides, man. And people have really been flipping out on it. And it's a great song, man. I don't think there's any other reason. But there was this very sweet serendipity to it. I mean, I named Penrose Records after my daughters, Penelope and Rosalie. But it was just coincidence that all of a sudden I realized, yo, they've got this killer song. This should be our debut. And it was after I'd already slated it and put it as PRS 1001, the first Penrose release, when I realized, wait a second, this how could you have a better introduction to Penrose Records than Can I Call You Rose,
Right.
And, we had the logo with the rose, and it was just serendipity, man. It's just perfection, sweet
Nice.
perfection. I got lucky on that, man. The universe threw me one on that one, man. So, that's my setup for them. We got another 45 on them coming out soon. Somebody asked about more Penrose stuff. there's a lot of stuff coming, man. There's Alton stuff that's killing. There's Jason Joshua track I was working on the other day. There's more Sacred Soul stuff. There's a lot of tracks coming, man. So, you know, anyway, that's the Sacred Soul. That's all I got for you, man.
Can I call you Rose? Cause you're sweet like a flower in bloom. Can I call you Rose? Can I call you Rose? Cause your fragrance takes over the room. Can I call you, darling? Can I call you Rose? Cause your thorns won't let love in too soon. Can I call you Rose? Can I call you Rose? Cause your roots have the power to consume me. I wanna plant you in my heart. Oh, so let it grow. I was meditating on love. You
Talking part right there, Jorge.
the universe told me, put it in a love song. Won't you let me in your heart? Your heart. Oh,
So he did the talking in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
right there. You got it. Yeah,
So,
man.
so folks, we only have a couple minutes left. And Gabe, so, you know, when we logged on at 5:30, you said 2 hours. We got plenty of time. And I told you that there was no way that we were going to finish with today's discussion in that 2 hours because there's just too much to talk about.
I was just a puppet on a string. I gave you everything. Wish I knew your love was untrue. That would have saved some soul searching. Now I'm nobody's man, nobody's man. Now I'm nobody's man, nobody's man. Sorry if I treated you badly. I only wanted to love you madly. If you came back, I'd take you back gladly. But that's not going to happen, sadly. Now I'm nobody's man, nobody's man. Now I'm nobody's man, nobody's man. Well,
was fantastic. So Gabe, they want me to ask you if you would do a part 2.
A part 2 of that song?
No, a part 2 of this program, because we only hit 4 songs of Daptone, and we only hit maybe 4 songs of Penrose.
Yeah, 4 or 5 Penrose songs. Yeah.
Right. So they want to know, would you be willing to come back and do a part 2, and then we could play some more. Maybe we'll do more music playing and less talking, or whatever. But the talking is important because that's history.
Well,
They're never going to get that from anybody else, right?
Yeah, well,
And
I apologize for some of that. Like I told you, man, I get going, man, and you know.
No, dude, I wanted to hear about Sharon Jones. I wanted to hear about Charles Bradley. I wanted to hear about them and how, who they were and what they were about, and, stuff that you can't glean from just listening to their music. No, I wanted to know. Everybody wanted to know about that. So no, that was good. Never apologize for giving information.
No,
Never.
man. I hear you, man. I was
right.
with both of those people on their deathbed, man, and both of them, I told them, like, man, I'm gonna make sure that people hear your music for as long as I'm around, man. So yeah, man, I'm down.
All right,
Part 2,
so-
man. Play some more records.
All right, good. So we'll work out a date, and those of you that are paying attention, we'll send out, just to go to the Riverside either Facebook page or their web page, and it's always there. So I want to play Mireya Avila, I Want You Around. This is a song that I used to listen to when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm. Marvin Gaye and Mary Wells, right? That's Joey Quinones on the harmonies too. Best first line ever written.
I don't like you, but I love you. Seems that I'm always thinking of you. Oh, you treat me badly. I love you madly. You really got a hold on me. You really got a hold on me. You really got a hold on me. You really got
all right there. Smokey Robinson tune, man, right there.
Well, greatest American poet of all time, Smokey Robinson.
That's it. Here's Trish Toledo. This is her tune. Again with the lowrider. Yeah.
'Cause I like the way you love me, thrill me, chill me, love me, oh, baby, oh, girl, oh, and I like the way you love me, oh, girl, you're my
I've been waiting to unbox this for a long time. Cash, even more cash. User manual. More cash. See my cables.
Your vocal is bleeding over, sir.
Wait, I get it. This is all the money I saved shopping online with Honey at over 30,000 stores. At checkout, Honey searches for coupon codes and automatically applies them to your card. You don't have to do a thing. You just save money. The average household in the United States.
I'm in love with you. If I shall try to give you love, but you keep lying, and you keep running. So tell me, yeah,
All right. I won't play all of that song, but I need to say goodnight. I know that a lot of people who work today and who teach, I've been teaching via Zoom, and they probably have Zoom doom gloom. So we will do part two. Gabe, again, thank you, and everyone who has attended. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate the fact that you take some time out of your life in order to listen to the madness that we hand out to you folks. So we will do part two, but thank you very much. Good night, folks.
And thank you, Jorge, man. Really, you're an inspirational dude, man.
And thanks to Riverside Art Museum. Fantastic. Love you guys.
And yeah, thank you to Drew and to everybody around, man. Thank you guys, man. Thank you guys
So
for showing
hosts,
up.
if you could disconnect.
Thank you.
Good night.